So if Jim Harbaugh leaves, obviously, then Michigan's got to go find a coach to replace one of the better coaches in college football. Okay, let's say he stays. Do you have an issue with this? Some people may call it a circus. Some people may just call it a distraction. Whatever this is becoming just about every offseason with Jim Harbaugh's flirtations with the NFL.
I don't like it. However, I right before coming on, I heard Joel Klatt's thoughts on it, and it actually makes a little bit of sense to me what he had to say about it. Before I get to what he said, what I don't like is that obviously after what 6 years, really five, the first 5 years, every offseason it was this Jim Harbaugh is going to bolt to the NFL, and he was able to just squash that immediately, and yet it became like kind of a recruiting distraction. Then it made a little bit more sense in 2020 after that season. It wasn't really that is he going to go to the NFL? It was kind of does Michigan even want him at this point? Because clearly this isn't working. So he had to build things back up. So then the first year he does it, 2021, he goes and interviews with the Vikings with the expectation he's going to be offered the job and take the job. And it doesn't work out that way. But as a result, we saw it's not like the recruiting class from 2023 ended up being awful. It was kind of middling. It's kind of where we used to see Clemson tend to finish even in its big runs, kind of, 17th ish, top 20 class, but not anything necessarily great to write home about. Not really any marquee recruits. But that was kind of the issue, is that it really made some of those guys that seemed like they were likely to pick Michigan. Dante Moore, a guy that got offered by Michigan when he was in 8th grade. I mean, it's weird for me to even see him now as a quasi grown up about to go play college football, because I'm used to seeing him as kind of like this little kid that Michigan had offered. They weren't able to get some of those types of guys as a result of that uncertainty. So to kind of find yourself in this position yet again, that's somewhat problematic for the program in a lot of respects, because as much as he can go out there and say, hey, you know what? No, I want to be at Michigan for life. Kind of like what he said after he came back. He said, I'll be at Michigan for as long as they'll have me. To go through this rigmarole once again, that ends up making it so you can have some of those same issues you just had a year ago. And you would think a team coming off of back-to-back Big Ten championships, back-to-back college football playoff appearances, and you have so many players coming back, that you would want to be able to go out and show recruits and be like, hey, if you're a running back, you're an offensive lineman, why wouldn't you want to come play in Ann Arbor? They haven't been able to really do that. Now, I really like what Joel Klatt had to say about the matter, which kind of eased my kind of version up a little bit, where he said that Michigan, from an institutional standpoint, needed to kind of modernize, and he's doing these things to not last year, but more so this year, which would make sense given his statements, his intent to remain at Michigan. He said it on December 4th. He said it again a week and a half ago, that he fully intends on coaching Michigan in 2023, that he's going out and having these interviews and conversations that he's had essentially to leverage Michigan into changing a lot of the things that it's doing as far as NIL, perhaps it's transfers and admissions and different things of that nature, that has kind of set Michigan back in a lot of ways, because Michigan is a very stodgy institution. It hasn't quite modernized with a lot of the recruiting elements. Now, if that's true, I like it, but I still don't like the fact that it does take away. You've got players right now who are sitting there wondering, is Jim Harbaugh going to be my coach? And he's telling them, yes, I'm going to be your coach. But until pen is put to paper, there's certainly going to be that opportunity that someone swoops in and tries to sign him to a max contract, gives him full power, the kind of things that he absolutely desires and craves from the NFL. It's just a matter of, you need to be able to retain what you had built, because last year, not only did you lose recruits, you lost your offensive coordinator as a direct result of what had happened, because it seemed like he thought he was going to be maybe that next in line type of guy, and it didn't end up going that way. So he ended up bolting for Miami. And you want to be able to have the consistency as far as if you're going to bring the band back together as far as players, you need to do the same as coaches, and you need to be able to be able to lure some of those top recruits to even they have their hat in the ring for a couple 2023 guys still. Nicholas Harbor, the 5-star, can play on either side of the ball, or Jamel Howard, the defensive tackle who was once committed to Wisconsin and seemed like he's Michigan's to lose. There's a couple other guys out there they're still trying to get, but you can't keep on doing this because you know what? You have another good year next year. Like is expected given the personnel. You find yourself in a situation where, again, NFL teams are going to be sitting there saying, well, why don't we talk to Jim Harbaugh? And it's going to be a lot harder to shut it down that, if it's going to keep on happening on a yearly basis, which 2 years is a trend.
Because I have no issue with any one of us looking at our career options. And for Jim Harbaugh, that's at the NFL level. I also have absolutely no thought that Jim Harbaugh can't love his job at Michigan and still be interested in the NFL. Both can exist at the same time. I have no doubt that Jim Harbaugh loves Michigan as much as any head coach in the country loves his school. That's obvious. Look at his past. Look at his legacy. I have an issue with maybe some of the things that he has stated, not as much this offseason, but last offseason when he put kind of a close on the whole deal and said, I'm a Michigan guy, and whatever the verbiage was after it was all said and done, that this was kind of in the past and we won't hear of this anytime soon. And here we are the next offseason, bam, we're back in the NFL circle.
Yeah, definitely agree with you on that because it's not that, if he wants to move on for his career and just because he craves a Super Bowl, then so be it. But you can't leave Michigan. If you're going to love Michigan the way that I know he does and he claims he does, you don't want to leave Michigan in the lurch either, which is a large reason why I believe he will be back. I think that this is, more so a power play, and he's trying to get the things that he wants. And obviously it's bad timing with these, the hamburger gate of it all when it comes to these NCAA violations that that have been uncovered. Very akin to what ended up sinking Jim Tressel. It doesn't sound like Michigan's going in down that road though. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly that gets cleared up, and if it does in fact get cleared up and he gets re-signed to a more substantial contract, which is what the word on the street is at the moment. So I do think that it's all fine and well if you do want to look for other options. It's just a matter of you need to make sure that the place that you're leaving is in good standing. And while it is in good standing as far as personnel and everything like that, if Michigan, say he does leave, Michigan would be significantly behind the 8 ball when it comes to head coaching searches, as far as retaining the class that literally just both signed as far as the recruiting class, as well as all of those guys who decided to come back. Now they've all kind of said, hey, we're back regardless of what Jim Harbaugh does, but you also don't want to essentially implode your program at the same time, just because you have gotten some kind of professional accolades again after getting in the college football playoff 2 years in a row. So I think it's a matter of trying to make sure that you're keeping the program on good standing, because that's, I think, of paramount importance. Maybe not as much to him, but it does sound like he, again, if Joel Klatt, what his opinion is, if that's an informed opinion, I think that could be brilliant. I still don't like the optics of it personally.
And the other aspect, Isaiah, of this that I can't quite figure out is why always Jim Harbaugh? So I'm trying to think of the last major head college football coach where it was out in public that he was conversing with the NFL. And Lincoln Riley, Dallas Cowboys, that's the first thing that comes to mind 3 or 4 years ago. But we don't hear about Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, fill in the blank, flirting with the NFL every offseason. Now, I don't know if this is because Jim Harbaugh wants it to be public or because he does have a different background. He does have a unique set of accomplishments when it comes to the only major college football coach currently in the college ranks who has achieved to the level that he has at the NFL. So maybe he's just more attractive as a candidate than these other guys, and therefore he's the target in the collegiate ranks.
I think there is absolutely something to that latter part. Actually, honestly, both parts. The latter part in particular, because I forgot what the number was. It was something like 49, 11, and 2 or something in his 4 years with San Francisco. Those aren't the exact numbers. That's just me spitballing there.
It's the fourth best winning percentage in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, it was stellar, and it happened almost immediately. I see a lot of people retconning what happened in San Francisco, even on the Michigan message boards. They say, "Well, San Francisco was loaded," and it's like, well, they hadn't made the playoffs in 10 years. They were 6-10 the year beforehand. Uh, I was a lot more of a regular NFL follower in that time, and I remember when he took over, I was like, well, that's going to be a challenge, and turns out not so much in terms of at least how quickly he got the 49ers to, the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl, and 3 out of the 4 years they made it that far. That's it's pretty spectacular. And like you said, there aren't these other coaches that get that, and I think that's in large part because of some of those guys who have gone and come back. Nick Saban did not do very well with the Miami Dolphins. Matt Rule just more recently turned around Temple and then Baylor and then goes to the Carolina Panthers as middling. Chip Kelly did a great job at Oregon, and actually, while he did still leave the NFL with a overall winning percentage, it was only by, I think, like 3 games. He was like 29-26 or something like that. Whereas Jim Harbaugh went and just absolutely crushed it. I think that is a big part of it. Now, I do think that because he hired an agent for the first time in his tenure at Michigan, after, I believe it was after the Ohio State game. And some of these things, like the discussion with the ownership of the Carolina Panthers, it turned out that was initiated by the Harbaugh side, not the Carolina Panthers side. So that does seem, as someone who has an agency background, everything, I worked at United Talent Agency for 4 years. Everything is always about optics. And especially if you find out something like that it was brought up by the Harbaugh side, and then it gets out there, because generally when we hear that type of reporting, it does come from the NFL side. It does typically end up kind of being like something where the NFL teams are putting it out there to either leverage other guys or to try to leverage Michigan and him and all of that kind of thing. A little bit different when it's coming from his side. It does make me think that was a power play one way or the other, because you wouldn't put that out there. You wouldn't want to initiate those types of things if you weren't serious on departing. And yet before that, and then not too long after that, he made the statement on the Fiesta Bowl conference call that I was on, where he said, I would be back enthusiastically coaching Michigan in 2023. And then a week after, not even, I think it was just a couple days after the Carolina news came out, he puts out a statement and saying, I will be enthusiastically back at Michigan coaching in 2023. So you always have to kind of question the motives, because that's kind of an agent type move to try to leverage one thing into another thing. And that was kind of the thing I learned. Now I worked in motion picture talent, so it's not quite the same as sports, but you're always trying to, you're taking the next role in order to get that next better role, right? You're not taking a role to kind of stay on the same plane. So it kind of does feel like it is that kind of power move to some degree. But the only person that could really answer exactly what he's thinking and why he's doing what he's doing is Jim Harbaugh, because he is a weird guy. He does have different motivations for different things. And to say that he's kooky would be an understatement. He definitely, I think, I shouldn't share this story. I'll just share a quick moment of how weird he is. I took my girl to go see Justin Bieber over the summer, and we were walking out and randomly run into Jim Harbaugh. And I was like, Jim, and he saw me and he's like, hey, and whatever. And the first thing he says to me is, so you got the Bieber fever too, huh? And it's like, how do you, like, that's just a weird thing to say, right? Like, it's just like an abnormal type way to interact with somebody. I found it endearing personally, but it was just like, what do you say back to that? He's just a weird dude. He has weird motivations for different things. And he just operates differently than most of us do. Kind of a savant in a lot of ways. So I don't know the exact motivation. I again think Klatt has an interesting theory on that, and I think it makes kind of everything else makes sense.
Yeah, there have been so many interactions between Jim Harbaugh and the media and other people interviewing him where I've thought, man, this guy is weird. He's awkward. He's this, he's that. What is the deal with this guy? But when it gets all added up together, he's successful. So it works for him.
I was laughing with Molly McGrath because she got like one of the first questions in at the press conference, the formal press conference the day before the Fiesta Bowl. And I was laughing with her because of all the times that I don't even see it. I'm down on the field. I see it on replay of all the times that she would been on Michigan games this year. And he just completely ducks her and completely is, hey, talk to this guy right here, and how frustrating that was. And she, first or second question, Molly McGrath, ESPN. I'm like, that's got to be vindication, because he is a weird guy like that. And you watched, if you watched the Baltimore Ravens Cincinnati Bengals playoff game yesterday, seeing John Harbaugh reluctantly answering questions in the middle of the game, it's like, how would Jim Harbaugh handle that? He wouldn't,